The moment you defend yourself, you admit weakness. You reveal fear, need, and emotional exposure all at once. Power never explains itself. Those who rush to defend are already losing. By the end of this, you will move differently. Less reactive, less readable. Your silence will start doing the work your words never could, and people will feel it without knowing why. Most people defend themselves because they believe truth needs protection, but this belief is a social illusion rooted in insecurity. In power dynamics, truth does not survive because it is explained well. It survives because it is backed by presence, status, and certainty. The moment you begin justifying yourself, you unconsciously communicate that the accusation has authority over you. You signal that your position is negotiable, that your identity can be questioned, and that you feel pressure to be accepted. Power does not operate from that psychological posture. Power assumes legitimacy and lets others adjust around it. When you explain, you shift from dominance to compliance. You move from being the reference point to being the respondent. This is why defensiveness is so costly. It places you in a lower frame where you are reacting instead of defining reality. Social hierarchies are not decided by logic. They are decided by emotional control and perceived certainty. The person who remains calm while being misunderstood is subconsciously ranked higher than the person who scrambles to clarify. Silence here is not passivity. It is an assertion that your position does not require permission. Most people fear that not defending themselves will damage their reputation. In reality, reputation is damaged far more by visible insecurity than by temporary misunderstanding. When someone rushes to explain, observers sense anxiety beneath the words. That anxiety becomes the story, not the accusation. Calm silence, on the other hand, creates a psychological vacuum. Others fill that vacuum by assuming strength, confidence, or indifference, all of which elevate status. Human perception always fills gaps in favor of the dominant figure. Defending yourself also reveals attachment. It tells others that their opinion has access to your emotional core. This is dangerous. Power depends on emotional independence. The less reactive you are, the less leverage others have. Those who understand this allow false narratives to exist temporarily because they know time and consistency will correct them without effort. They trust outcomes more than arguments. Very few understand that social power is maintained by what you refuse to engage with. By not defending yourself, you deny others the satisfaction of reaction. You do not reward provocation. Over time, people learn that challenging you yields nothing, no emotional spike, no explanation, no drama. That lesson trains respect more effectively than any verbal correction ever could. Defending yourself immediately hands psychological control to the person who challenges you because you accept their framing of reality. The accusation becomes the center of gravity and you orbit around it. This is the fundamental mistake most people make. They believe responding is strength when in fact it is submission to the other person's narrative. The moment you react, you acknowledge that their words have the authority to pull you out of your own position. Power never moves first in response to noise. Every challenge is a frame attempt. It is not always about truth, it is about hierarchy. When someone questions you, they are testing whether they can define the situation and force you into defense. If you explain yourself, you step inside their mental structure. You begin speaking their language, answering their assumptions, and validating their perspective as worthy of response. This is why even a calm explanation can weaken you. The issue is not emotion, it is alignment. You have aligned yourself beneath their frame. Silence disrupts this dynamic completely. When you do not respond, the frame collapses. The accuser is left holding an unanswered question, and unanswered questions create psychological discomfort. Humans seek closure. When closure is denied, they feel unsettled and exposed. The attacker must then either escalate, revealing desperation and lack of control, or retreat. In both cases, their position weakens while yours remains intact. Most people fear this silence because they assume others will side with the louder voice. This fear belongs to those who misunderstand social observation. Onlookers are not analyzing facts, they are reading behavior. They watch who remains composed and who loses discipline. The person who speaks excessively appears invested, defensive, and emotionally entangled. The person who stays quiet appears grounded and unthreatened. Over time, observers unconsciously grant authority to the one who does not need to convince. Defending yourself also gives your opponent information. Words reveal priorities, fears, values, and emotional thresholds. Once exposed, these can be used against you again. Silence reveals nothing. It creates asymmetry. You learn while the other side talks. You observe patterns, intentions, and limits without offering anything in return. Strategic advantage always flows toward the one who collects data without surrendering it. There is also a deeper layer to this exchange. By not defending yourself, you force the accuser to confront their own motives. Without resistance, their energy turns inward. They begin to question whether the attack was justified, whether it landed, whether it made them look insecure. This internal shift weakens their confidence. Power struggles are rarely won through confrontation, they are won through imbalance. When one side remains still, the other destabilizes itself. Very few people have the discipline to resist immediate response. That is why this tactic works so reliably. It separates those ruled by impulse from those governed by awareness. Over time, people learn that challenging you does not grant them influence or engagement. And when engagement disappears, so does their power over you. Most people are conditioned to believe that silence equals guilt because they are raised inside systems that reward constant explanation. Schools, workplaces, and social groups train individuals to justify themselves quickly, to correct misunderstandings immediately, and to fear being misinterpreted. This conditioning produces compliance, not power. In reality, silence is not absence, it is presence without exposure. When someone remains silent under pressure, the human mind does not default to guilt. It searches for strength. The brain is wired to associate calm stillness with authority because only those who feel secure can afford not to react. Silence unsettles people precisely because it breaks expectation. When an accusation is thrown, the unconscious script expects defense, denial, or emotional fluctuation. When none of that appears, observers experience cognitive dissonance. They begin to question the original narrative, not because new facts were introduced, but because the behavior does not match weakness. Behavior always outweighs words in social ranking. A composed individual who allows misunderstanding appears internally anchored, while the one scrambling to correct perception appears dependent on approval. Those who fear silence believe reputation is fragile. This belief belongs to low-status thinking. High-status individuals understand that reputation is shaped over time through consistency, not momentary clarification. A single accusation does not destroy standing, visible insecurity does. When someone reacts quickly to protect their image, they inadvertently announce how valuable that image is to them. Observers register this attachment instantly. Attachment lowers perceived rank because it signals vulnerability. There is also a difference between being silent and being absent. Silence is active restraint. It communicates, without words, that you are not threatened by interpretation. This creates a psychological hierarchy. People intuitively place those who are unmoved by judgment above those who chase correction. The silent individual appears self-defined. The reactive individual appears externally defined. Social dominance always flows toward self-definition. Silence also forces others to do interpretive labor. Humans dislike uncertainty, especially around power figures. When you do not explain yourself, others are left to guess. Most guesses tilt upward. They assume confidence, strategy, or indifference. Even negative interpretations lose momentum without confirmation. Rumors require reinforcement. Silence denies reinforcement. Over time, narratives without fuel decay. Another overlooked effect of silence is emotional mirroring. Humans unconsciously mirror emotional states. When you remain calm and still, others feel the imbalance. Their agitation increases while yours does not. This contrast amplifies your control. The one who can remain internally steady while tension exists is subconsciously viewed as dominant. Emotional regulation is read as leadership, even outside formal hierarchies. Most people mistake silence for weakness because they measure strength by expression. True strength is measured by restraint. Anyone can react. Very few can pause, observe, and choose nothing. That choice requires internal order. It requires the absence of fear. Silence under pressure communicates that absence more clearly than any verbal assertion ever could. Over time, this behavior trains the environment. People learn that you do not operate on their emotional timetable. They learn that accusations do not pull you into chaos. This creates an invisible boundary. Respect forms not because you demand it, but because your stillness makes others regulate themselves around you. Power does not need to announce itself. It becomes obvious through what it does not do. Defensiveness is not a verbal habit. It is an emotional leak. It exposes what you are attached to, what you fear losing, and where your internal balance is fragile. The moment you defend yourself, you reveal that the situation has entered your nervous system. Others may not articulate it consciously, but they sense it immediately. Humans are highly attuned to emotional cues because, long before language, survival depended on reading internal states. Defensiveness signals threat response, and threat response signals vulnerability. What makes defensiveness so damaging is not the content of the defense, but the posture behind it. When you explain yourself, you communicate that you feel evaluated, that judgment matters, and that your self-image requires external approval to stabilize. This places psychological authority outside of you. Power, however, depends on internal authority. The individual who does not rush to correct perception signals that their identity is not fragile. They are not managing impressions in real time. They are not negotiating their worth. Most people defend themselves automatically because they are governed by impulse rather than awareness. An accusation triggers discomfort. Discomfort demands relief. Speech becomes the relief mechanism. This is unconscious behavior, not stupidity. The nervous system seeks to restore equilibrium. An explanation feels like control. In reality, it is the opposite. You are being controlled by the need to feel safe again. True control comes from tolerating discomfort without reacting to it. High-level individuals train themselves to notice the impulse to defend and then do nothing with it. This is not repression. Repression is denial of emotion. Mastery is observation of emotion without obedience to it. The feeling arises, is acknowledged internally, and is allowed to pass without action. This internal discipline separates those who are governed by circumstance from those who govern themselves. The outside world cannot destabilize someone who does not immediately externalize internal states. Defensiveness also exposes priorities. When you defend your reputation, you reveal that reputation governs you. When you defend your intentions, you reveal that being understood governs you. When you defend your actions, you reveal that judgment governs you. Each defense hands leverage to others. Once people know what you care about protecting, they know where pressure will work. Silence, by contrast, reveals nothing. It keeps your center opaque. Self-control is often misunderstood as emotional coldness. In reality, it is emotional sovereignty. You still feel irritation, injustice, and misrepresentation. You simply refuse to let those emotions dictate behavior. This refusal creates asymmetry. Others may be emotionally exposed, escalating, explaining, or justifying. You remain still. That contrast magnifies your composure and diminishes theirs without effort. There is also a timing component that most people miss. Immediate defense is rarely effective because it is reactive. Reactive behavior lacks strategy. It answers the moment rather than shaping the outcome. When you delay response or remove it entirely, you gain temporal advantage. Time filters emotion from information. If a response is ever required, it will be cleaner, narrower, and more authoritative because it was chosen, not forced. Unaware individuals believe strength is shown by clarity and assertiveness. Aware individuals understand that strength is shown by selectivity. You do not speak because you can. You speak because it serves you. Everything else is noise. By refusing to defend yourself impulsively, you demonstrate that you are not governed by other people's urgency. This alone elevates your perceived rank. Over time, consistent non-defensiveness reshapes how others treat you. People test boundaries unconsciously. When their attempts to provoke explanation fail, they adjust. They become more careful, more measured, or they disengage entirely. The environment learns that emotional hooks do not work on you. This lesson is absorbed without confrontation, without instruction, and without conflict. Ultimately, defensiveness is a symptom of external orientation. Power is internal orientation. The more anchored you are within yourself, the less you feel compelled to explain yourself to those who have not earned access. Silence, restraint, and emotional discipline do not make you invisible. They make you solid. And solidity changes the way every interaction unfolds around you. Machiavellian power is not loud, aggressive, or reactive. It is observational. It understands that most confrontations are not about truth or resolution, but about emotional extraction. When someone challenges you, accuses you, or provokes you, they are often seeking one thing above all else: reaction. Reaction validates their move. Reaction confirms relevance. Reaction gives them information. When you deny that reaction, you deny them the reward, and the dynamic begins to reverse immediately. Silence functions as a psychological mirror. When you do not respond, the other person is forced to face themselves. Their words echo back internally without resistance. This creates discomfort. Humans are not disturbed by opposition, they are disturbed by indifference. Opposition gives them something to push against. Indifference gives them nothing. In that nothingness, insecurity expands. The person who initiated the attack begins to fill the silence with more words, more emotion, more justification. In doing so, they expose themselves. This exposure is not accidental. When someone talks too much, they leak motive. They reveal whether they are acting from envy, insecurity, fear, or a desire for dominance. They reveal how invested they are. The more emotionally charged their escalation becomes, the clearer their internal state appears. Meanwhile, you reveal nothing. This imbalance is where power consolidates. You gain insight without cost. They pay for expression with credibility. Most people misunderstand this process because they believe strength lies in confrontation. They believe winning means overpowering the other person verbally. This belief keeps them trapped in reactive cycles. Machiavellian strategy understands that winning often means letting the other side lose control on their own. When you remain still, the other person must carry the entire emotional weight of the exchange. Few can handle that burden gracefully. There is also a social dimension at play. Observers are always present, even when invisible. They are not judging arguments, they are judging composure. When one person escalates and the other remains calm, the hierarchy becomes obvious. The escalator appears unstable. The silent one appears unmovable. Over time, credibility migrates toward the composed individual without a single word being spoken. Silence also disrupts expectation patterns. Most people have rehearsed scripts for conflict. They know how to attack and how to defend. They know how to respond to resistance. What they are unprepared for is absence of engagement. This forces improvisation, and improvisation under emotional strain leads to mistakes. These mistakes accumulate. Contradictions appear. Tone shifts. The mask slips. All of this happens because you refuse to play your assigned role. Another critical aspect of this strategy is patience. Letting others reveal themselves requires tolerance for temporary discomfort. It requires resisting the urge to correct, clarify, or dominate the moment. This is where most fail. They mistake short-term emotional relief for long-term advantage. Machiavellian awareness prioritizes position over comfort. It accepts being momentarily misunderstood in exchange for being permanently unexploitable. When someone continues to attack without response, they begin to look unreasonable. Their behavior becomes the focus rather than their message. This is a subtle but powerful shift. The issue is no longer what they said, it is how they are behaving. They become the subject of scrutiny. You become the reference point. This inversion happens quietly, but once it happens, it is difficult to reverse. Silence also denies escalation pathways. Arguments grow through feedback loops. One reaction fuels the next. When you remove your contribution, the loop collapses. The other person must either intensify alone or disengage. Intensification alone looks erratic. Disengagement looks like retreat. Neither outcome serves them. Both serve you. Very few people have the discipline to use this consistently, which is why it remains effective. It requires emotional containment, strategic patience, and confidence in delayed outcomes. But once mastered, it changes how others approach you. People become more cautious. They test less. They speak more carefully. Not because you intimidated them, but because your silence trained them. Over time, this creates a reputation that does not need defense. People sense that provoking you yields no payoff, no drama, no leverage, no exposure. This is the quiet advantage Machiavelli understood deeply. Power is not taken by force, but accumulated by restraint. When others reveal themselves and you remain unreadable, the balance tilts permanently in your favor. Defending yourself often strengthens the very accusation you are trying to escape, because repetition gives weight to ideas regardless of their truth. The human mind is not designed to evaluate fairness first, it evaluates familiarity. The more something is repeated, the more real it feels. When you respond to an accusation, you restate it, refine it, and give it structure. You help it mature. What could have remained vague and weak becomes defined and memorable because you participated in its development. Attention is the true currency of social power. Whatever receives attention grows. When you defend yourself, you feed the accusation with your focus, your time, and your emotional energy. You elevate it to something worthy of discussion. Silence does the opposite. Silence starves. It deprives the accusation of oxygen, leaving it unsupported and unstable. Without reinforcement, even sharp attacks dull quickly. Most accusations collapse, not because they are disproven, but because they are ignored. Many attacks are not designed to expose truth. They are designed to provoke reaction. They function as probes. A probe tests boundaries, emotional thresholds, and access points. The attacker is not asking whether they are right, they are asking whether they can move you. When you defend yourself, you answer that question clearly. You confirm that pressure works. You confirm that your emotions are reachable. This knowledge becomes leverage for future interactions. Silence breaks this feedback loop entirely. When a probe meets no response, it fails. The attacker receives no data. They do not learn what bothers you, what you value, or how far they can go. This uncertainty weakens them. Humans rely on patterns to exert influence. When patterns disappear, influence decays. Silence is not absence of action, it is the removal of predictability. Most people fear that ignoring accusations allows them to spread unchecked. This fear misunderstands how social narratives actually move. Narratives do not spread because they are unchallenged. They spread because they are emotionally charged and repeatedly referenced. Defensiveness increases both. Calm non-engagement reduces both. Without emotional escalation, stories lose urgency. Without urgency, attention drifts elsewhere. There is also a hierarchy of credibility that operates beneath the surface. When someone attacks and you do not respond, observers subconsciously ask why. They do not immediately assume guilt. More often, they assume asymmetry. They assume the silent person is above the exchange. Status bias fills the gap. People tend to believe that those with higher standing do not engage in petty defense. Silence aligns you with that assumption. Defending yourself also anchors you to the past moment. You become locked into explaining what happened, what you meant, or why something is untrue. This backward orientation is weak. Power is forward-facing. It does not linger in justification, it moves on. When you refuse to defend, you signal that you are not stuck in the moment. You are not negotiating history. You are operating beyond it. Another overlooked consequence of defense is emotional contagion. When someone attacks emotionally and you respond defensively, you synchronize emotional states. You match their intensity. This creates parity. Silence prevents synchronization. You remain regulated while they escalate. This divergence amplifies their instability and your composure. Emotional imbalance is read as dominance. The one who stays regulated sets the tone, even without speaking. Silence also exposes the true strength of an accusation. If it is legitimate, it will survive without your participation. If it is weak, it will collapse under its own weight. Most attacks are weak. They rely on reaction to stay alive. When deprived of that reaction, they fade. By staying silent, you allow reality to do the sorting instead of interfering with it emotionally. Unaware individuals believe they must protect themselves at all times. Aware individuals understand that constant defense is unsustainable and unnecessary. They choose their battles carefully. They understand that responding to everything places them in a perpetual reactive posture. Silence is a filter. It ensures that only issues of real consequence ever reach engagement. Over time, this behavior changes how others approach you. People learn that accusations do not yield access. Provocation does not produce control. Drama does not extract energy. This training effect is subtle but permanent. Those who seek reaction stop targeting you. Those who seek substance adjust their approach. Your silence reshapes the social environment without confrontation. The most powerful outcome of this strategy is internal. When you stop defending yourself reflexively, you reclaim emotional autonomy. You are no longer governed by the need to correct perception. You are no longer pulled into every misunderstanding. You choose when to speak and when not to. This choice restores internal hierarchy, where awareness commands impulse. Silence is not weakness disguised as restraint. It is strength that does not need to announce itself. When accusations pass through you without friction, they lose their force. When attacks meet nothing, they fall flat. And when people realize they cannot move you emotionally, they stop trying. This is not avoidance. It is dominance through non-engagement. There is a profound difference between defensive reaction and strategic response. And understanding this distinction is what separates those who are controlled by circumstance from those who control it. Most people confuse action with power. They believe that responding immediately to a challenge, an accusation, or a provocation demonstrates strength. They feel compelled to justify, explain, or clarify because they assume silence will be interpreted as weakness. This assumption is one of the most costly errors in human behavior. Defensive reactions are emotional, impulsive, and reactive. They give control to the other person. Strategic responses, on the other hand, are calculated, delayed, and precise. They occur on the terms of the individual who is aware, not on the terms of the provocateur. The reactive person is always responding to a frame someone else has established. They accept the narrative as their own battlefield. By defending themselves, they enter the terrain mapped by the attacker. Every word, every gesture, every attempt at justification signals participation in someone else's design. It does not matter whether their argument is logical or their evidence sound. The act of engaging at all concedes influence. This is why reaction, no matter how eloquent, often strengthens the position of the challenger. It confirms relevance, exposes vulnerabilities, and offers cues that can be exploited later. Emotional transparency, when unearned, is never a gift, it is a liability. Strategic response is fundamentally different because it is detached from immediate emotional triggers. It begins with observation and assessment. The aware individual notices the impulse to react, acknowledges it internally, and then consciously chooses whether engagement will serve a long-term objective. The timing of response is critical. A delayed answer, or a response that is never offered, conveys authority more convincingly than an immediate defense ever could. Silence is not surrender. It is a deliberate choice to conserve energy, protect leverage, and allow circumstances to unfold in a way that favors positional strength. Only when a response has maximum impact does it become worthwhile. This distinction also applies to the internal state during engagement. Defensive reactions are accompanied by elevated emotional arousal, racing thoughts, subtle tension, increased heart rate, and the subconscious signaling of vulnerability. All of this is perceivable to those around you, even if unconsciously. Strategic responses, by contrast, are accompanied by measured internal regulation. The individual remains centered, emotionally neutral, and internally autonomous. This discrepancy is immediately noticeable. People sense stability and composure intuitively. Those who respond impulsively appear chaotic. Those who respond strategically appear untouchable. Part of strategic response is understanding the psychology of human attention. Most people overestimate the importance of defending facts, arguments, or personal reputation. What matters more in social and professional dynamics is perception of control, a calculated pause before responding, or the conscious decision not to respond at all shifts the psychological burden to the other person. They must decide how to interpret silence. Humans are uncomfortable with ambiguity, and the uncertainty generated by non-response forces reflection, overthinking, and sometimes self-correction. In effect, you weaponize the human need for cognitive closure, turning the accuser's energy against themselves without lifting a finger. Another layer is the strategic management of escalation. Defensive reactions escalate interactions because they add fuel to emotional fire. They validate the initiator's behavior and encourage further confrontation. A strategic responder, by contrast, controls escalation. They determine when, where, and how interaction energy is expended. The moment of intervention is chosen to maximize impact, not to satisfy emotional impulses. This approach also ensures that engagement, when it occurs, aligns with long-term influence rather than momentary relief or validation. Furthermore, strategic response enhances learning and intelligence gathering. When you resist impulsive defense, you observe patterns, intentions, and behaviors without contaminating the interaction with your own emotional signals. You collect information passively while others expose themselves actively. Every probe, every attack, every insinuation becomes data. Defensive reaction forfeits this advantage because it prioritizes immediate emotional regulation over analysis. Strategic individuals see the world as a chessboard. They recognize that every engagement is an opportunity to understand the structure, intentions, and weaknesses of those around them. Timing is not merely a tool of effectiveness, it is also a tool of perception. The human mind assigns authority to those who do not rush. The instant someone reacts, observers subconsciously perceive urgency, which is often interpreted as neediness or exposure. When a response is delayed, measured, or withheld entirely, the perception flips. Observers assume composure, confidence, and self-assurance. The delayed responder is read as the one in control, the one whose status is inherent and unshakable. This is why strategic restraint consistently outweighs defensive impulse, even when the defensive person's argument appears strong on paper. An essential aspect of this principle is its subtlety. Strategic response does not call attention to itself. It is not designed to impress or dominate verbally. It is designed to conserve leverage while allowing the natural dynamics of interaction to unfold advantageously. This contrasts sharply with defensive behavior, which often exaggerates involvement and emotional investment. The difference is visible. Even if not consciously processed, one person is emotionally entangled, reactive and exposed, while the other maintains distance, autonomy, and influence. Perhaps most importantly, strategic response requires trust in delayed outcomes. Impulsive individuals seek immediate validation, assuming that power must be asserted in real time. The strategic individual understands that power is cumulative, not reactive. By choosing when to act and when to remain silent, they allow external forces, perception, and human psychology to operate in their favor. Time itself becomes an ally. Patience is not hesitation, it is deliberate orchestration. Over time, consistently employing strategic response transforms both perception and social dynamics. People learn that provocations are unproductive. Attempts to manipulate, pressure, or destabilize you fail repeatedly. This conditioning is subtle but permanent. Others begin to approach interactions differently, assuming that you are a person whose actions are measured, considered, and rarely reactive. Your authority becomes self-reinforcing. It is recognized without declaration. Finally, the mastery of strategic response elevates the individual above ordinary social chaos. While others are trapped in cycles of accusation, justification, and emotional reaction, the strategic thinker navigates interactions on a higher plane, controlling perception, timing, and influence. The result is not dominance through aggression, but dominance through patience, awareness, and discipline. Every engagement becomes an opportunity to consolidate influence, rather than a battleground of defensiveness. Mastery of this principle is the hallmark of elite presence, where strength is demonstrated not through words shouted, but through control maintained quietly, consistently, and without surrender. If this sharpened your awareness, like the video and subscribe, not for motivation, but for mastery. Final truth: the more you try to prove your strength, the less of it you actually have. Sometimes, the most powerful move is saying nothing.